Okay, welcome. Thanks for coming. I am going to try really hard not to pace. I've told people before I usually walk around when I talk, so if I drift away from the mic, then you guys really have to throw things at me or make me stop. I'm also a little bit crazy, and I talk fast, and I know there's a lot of non-English speakers in the audience, so if I'm talking too fast for you, just raise your hand and say slow down or shout out slow down. And I've been married for many years now, and I take criticism very well, so just shout it out and I'll behave. Okay, so I'm going to talk about good projects, and I start with the mindset that a project can be great. And so over the past 20 years, we've been doing all different processes. We've tried all different sorts of ways to make good projects. And what we found is when projects fail, they tend to fail for one of four reasons. Most of what I'm going to talk about today falls into the bad process category, and that's because those other three things can be solved by a good process. And so it doesn't mean they're trivial, and I'll talk about them all. And if you have questions about any of them specifically, let me know. The other thing I want to say is I'm American, and we're kind of obnoxious. I don't know if you know that about us, but we're a little obnoxious sometimes. I've been told in Europe people are a lot more polite and don't necessarily ask questions or shout out. I'm just going to say that if you feel the urge to just act American, even if you're not, and just like raise your hand or shout out a question in the middle of my talk, please feel free to. I'm totally fine with that. So, okay, so for the past 19 years, my wife and I have had a multimedia company based in Massachusetts, which is in the United States. We do all sorts of fun stuff for all sorts of companies. Many of them you've heard of, many of them you haven't heard of. Right now, I'm actually on a one-year sabbatical. I'm living in Siena with my wife and my 4 kids. And the reason I'm here is because we have had so much success removing waste from projects that when I see people kind of doing projects the way we did them 5 years ago, then I just feel really bad and I want to help people. And so I'm here just to kind of spread the word. And I love doing this sort of stuff. I love craziness. I mean, I mentioned I have 4 kids, so obviously I love craziness. You'd think that's hard, but it's actually really easy. I mean, it's actually very easy to have 4 kids. My goal here is that I want everyone in this audience to come away with 3 things that will make their life easier. 3, and they could be little things. They could save 5 minutes a day. They could save 5 minutes a week. But my goal is to make sure everyone comes away with 3 things. And so if you don't have those 3 things, get me afterwards, and I will spend as much time as necessary to make sure that you learn something and you can apply something to your day-to-day life here. Yeah, you've heard about me. Great. What about you? I just want to know kind of who's in the audience. And so I'm going to ask that most people only pick 1 thing. Sometimes you have to pick 2. But so I'm just going to go through the list. How many people here are in a leadership position? That's a lot. All right. That means you don't do anything. Okay, now we'll get into all the people that actually do things. How many people are logistics people? They kind of keep things running on time. They keep things moving. A couple. That was like a half. We got like 4.5. Okay. How many people are communications, marketing, sales, tech support? They're out there talking to people. Okay, very few. Front-end dev. Whoa, why did I click that? Front-end developers. How many people are front-end developers? Few. Okay. How many people are hardcore programmers? That's what I expected them all to be. That's actually less than the leadership. Interesting. How many people are design? Anyone? There's like usually 1. This is good. We got like 8. Okay. And how many people are other? How many people did I not cover there? You just want to shout out what you are?
Well, a bit of everything, to be honest.
Bit of everything?
If I have to choose one, I'll choose other.
You'll choose other. Okay, that's fair. An architect? DevOps architect? Nice. It's about process.
I'm self-employed, so
So you're like
I do a bit of everything.
Scrubbing the toilet and doing absolutely everything. Okay, good. Okay, so size of companies, just so we have a feel for who's in the room and who's sitting next to you. How many people are in companies over 1,000 employees? Is that about 20%, I'd say? How many 100 to 99? About 10%. 15 to 99? Large percent, maybe 40%. 2 to 4? Sorry. Haha. Few. Okay. And how many people are lone gunslingers? And just out of curiosity, it's like, you really are. There's like 3 of you, so you're gonna have to have a shootout out in the hall or something. How many people are part of the Drupal.org organization? Anyone here? Got a few. Okay, great. Thank you for those of you that just raised your hand there. We appreciate it. Everyone in this room appreciates it. Size of projects. And I only have a couple more slides of this, so don't worry. How many people work on different projects practically every week? Okay, sizable group. Okay, different every quarter. Okay, that looks like a little more than half, and same thing all year long. Okay, so they're slightly less, but it's pretty much a third split. Okay. So here's where you're going to have to talk. Pretend you're American. You're going to have to shout some things out. What are your favorite things about, like, why are you doing your job? What are your favorite things about doing your job? So someone shout out.
Coding.
What was that? Coding. You like coding. Awesome. Designing. Good. What else? Problem solving. Sorry? Challenging. You like the hardest things, right? Freedom. Integrating? Innovating. I thought you said integrating. I was going to say you're like the only one I've ever met that likes it. Database. I like database merging. Yay. And there probably is someone. So if you're that person, we all love you and we'd all like to hire you. So don't feel bad. I'm not teasing you. Okay, so the things that people usually miss when they go through this is people, no one shouted this out, but I'm sure you were all thinking you love the recap meeting. You know, here's what we did last week. We're going to spend an hour talking about it as a group. Or when we're working on the project and we're like, we're going to change the functionality. We're going to change the look. It's time to do that. We're on round 7 of that. I mean, when you get into the double digits, that's where design revisions really get fun. Once you get to like 10, 11, 12, that's... or when the marketing director leaves. I mean, has anyone ever been in a project where a marketing director or the project or IT director or some key point person left? Raise your hand if you've halfway through a project, the key person left. I mean, that's awesome, right? Right? Change orders, removing features. I mean, this is always cool. I mean, you build this thing, you've been stressing about it for months, right? And then at the last minute, it's like, we actually don't need that. So all your stress was for nothing. It's just a relief, isn't it? It makes you feel good inside, right? Or those specs. I mean, like, the thicker the spec, the better. I mean, I kind of use weight as my criteria as to what's the best spec possible. So, something we heard in the keynote is there's got to be a better way to a lot of these processes we're using now. And I thought this was a great quote we heard in the keynote also, so I added this here. I mean, we have to start with the assumption that we can't predict the future. I mean, that's great. Harry Potter, there are some people that can predict the future, but even that's kind of vague, right? I mean, like, you really wouldn't want to base a project plan on Harry Potter's predictions of the future, right? I mean, Voldemort's going to die in the last book, but other than that, like, who else is going to die? Okay, so and we need to change the way that we do things. So I do have another question for all of you, and I want to ask this out there. When you're sitting down and working in your day-to-day, which of these things are you actually adding value to? And I'm not going to go through and necessarily do a show of hands, but think about it. Like, are you writing code because you're supposed to write code? Are you writing code for your boss? Are you writing code because it's in the spec? Are you writing code or configuring something or managing a project or doing whatever this other thing you're doing because you're adding some sort of tangible value? And then the other question that I think everyone should ask themselves at least, I'm going to say at least once a week, but really you should ask yourself it every hour, is in the past hour, in the past day, in the past week, have I actually done anything that contributes to the core thing I'm trying to solve, or have I just been doing all of the busy work because that's what you're supposed to do and that's the structure we put around a project? And so about 5 or 6 years ago, we said, well, what if we just stopped doing all the stuff that wasted time? And the inspiration for this, does anyone know what Habitat for Humanity is? Raise your hand if you've heard of it. It's a really great nonprofit organization in America. And what happens is people go and volunteer in low-income places to help build houses. And it's really, really a fascinating thing. And so we as a company have gone and volunteered multiple times. We've donated to them. It's really rewarding. It's really fun. But when we were working there, we were realizing this fact that Habitat for Humanity can build 100 houses in a week. Now, these houses pass code. They're not fire hazards. They're structurally sound. People can live in them. They have plumbing. They have electricity. I mean, electricity starts fires and blows things up. They have gas. They have all this dangerous stuff. They have a whole bunch of people that don't know what they're doing and aren't wearing hard hats, has been pointed out to me before, swinging hammers and nails and saws, and they managed to build 100 houses in 1 week. And so why is there ever a 12-month web project? And you know, I'm a little facetious because, yes, that has to happen. But I think the first thing we have to acknowledge is there is a lot of waste in our system. And how do we get rid of that waste, okay? How many people are familiar with lean manufacturing, Kaizen or Toyota or anything like that? Okay, so this slide will probably not be new to a lot of you, but to the rest of you, this is pretty exciting. So what Toyota does is it says, instead of trying to make our processes shorter, what we should try to do is take the things that are a waste out of the process. And so if you look at our process, and this is just a rough approximation of what it might look like to design and build a website, if you look at it and you look at what truly adds value, and then you take out everything that's not that. Okay? So it's not about making the project shorter. It's not about cutting down on time. It's about focusing your time on the things that add value. And so what would a project look like if we only did these 4 things? I mean, think about it. Think about how much more rewarding your day would be. Think about how much more successful the project would be. And so you don't have recap meetings. You go live quickly. It's okay not to know before you start, because here's the thing. We write these giant specs because we're afraid of not knowing. But has anyone ever seen a spec that by the time you launch the project is actually the right thing for the project? I mean, I've seen projects where the spec is implemented to spec, but it's never actually been the right answer when that happens. And more likely, halfway through, someone throws out the skip back and rewrites the spec. And so we have to start with the assumption that we don't actually know what the right answer is. And so you can have lots of different reactions to that, right? And so just out of curiosity, I just look at her and her. I mean, you have like, it's fear and joy, right? And so just out of curiosity, how many people right now as I'm talking are in the fear camp? And be perfectly honest, raise your hand if you're in the fear camp right now as I'm saying this stuff. You got a few, and they're all raising your hand halfway. You can be bold. I mean, if you're in the fear camp, just be like, I am in the fear camp. Now, how many people are in the excitement camp? Just out of curiosity. Okay, a few more. And then I'm guessing the other people that didn't raise their hands are either in a coma because they just ate lunch, or they're somewhere in between, which is fine. So here's the thing. The thing we're afraid of is we're afraid of change. We're afraid of risk. We're afraid of doing something wrong. And so there's a saying which is, you never get fired for hiring IBM. And the theory behind that is if you hire IBM and they mess up, and your boss calls you into the office and says, that project was horrible, you can turn around and say, well, I hired IBM. They're like the best company in the world at system integration. It wasn't my fault. And you keep your job safe. That's not necessarily the best way to do a project. Now, I'm not saying IBM is a bad choice to hire either, just to put it out there. If anyone from IBM's out there, you can put away your pitchforks. So what does all this look like? So I'm going to give an example of a project that we did. How many people have had experience working in higher education in any capacity, in a university or a college setting? Okay, so when I was a graduate student, I started to get involved in faculty meetings, and I was completely shocked to see that in the university, there was a series of about 8 meetings to decide which faculty member got how many chairs in which room. And so the saying in colleges in America is they fight so much because the stakes are so low. And so you're fighting for nothing, so you might as well fight harder, is basically the philosophy in higher education. So we were called in by Nantucket Community College, and this entire project was managed by a committee of 12 people. And we were told from the offset that these 12 people never agree. There are people in the room that have literally never agreed on anything campus-wide, and they need a new website. The one thing that they all seem to agree on is they did need a new website, but everyone had a different reason for why they needed a new website. Now, I mean, we can look at their old website and we can come up with about 1 billion reasons why they need a new website. And so Our challenge was to come up with a new website, which we were able to do, which this is a community college. This is for people that whose parents might not have gone to college. It needs to be really accessible, really, really friendly, really open, really inviting, really comfortable. It can't be scary. This isn't a die-hard, really, really difficult academic college. This is a gentle, let's have a couple years, get you up to the next level, and then you can go on to another college and challenge yourself more. And so this is the project that we built, and this project went live 1 month after we started it. From the day we kicked it off to the day it went live was 1 month. There's 500 pages. There are 12 stakeholders in it, and I'm going to talk a little about what that looked like and show a little bit about the roadmap. I'm seeing some weird looks. Does anyone want to say anything right now? Because you can say it if you want. No? Okay.
Where did you bury them?
Where did I bury them? Okay. So the first 5 days we had what we call a blitz. Now I'm going to interject for a second here and say, much to my embarrassment, after years of mocking Agile as the stupidest, most useless thing in the world, we've kind of become an Agile shop, and it's kind of surprising. That being said, we don't practice Scrum. For the types of projects that we have, we actually find it to be very, very slow, drawn out, and process heavy. And so we have our own process. We call it the blitz. And so the way this 1 month project worked is we set up a 5-day blitz where day 1, day 3, so Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the client was in the office with us. The in-between days, our team worked on things and they worked on things in their location. And the bulk of the starting work happened in those 5 days. And then the next 3 weeks, we're polishing and filling in content. And so I'm going to walk through especially what that first week is like. So during the first 5 days, we got their stakeholders in the room. We were adamant that anyone that might be able to change, anyone that's going to disagree with the people in the room, needed to be involved in the first hour, and they needed to give some feedback on the direction of the website and what constituted success. So we got the president of the college on the phone for an hour. We got a couple of high-powered deans on the call, and then we had our small web team of 12 people. So we set the direction. We did research on how that works, and we did user testing in those 5 days. We did design with multiple rounds of revision. We got sign-off on that design by the 12-person committee. Now, here's the thing that's actually really awesome. Our designer did a little bit of prep work the day before, but not a lot. By the end of the first day, the 12-person committee actually signed off on the direction. It wasn't pixel perfect, but they all said, we're okay with that direction, and we're okay having self-selected 2 people out of our team of 12. And remember, these are people that fought all the time. 2 people out of our team of 12 to work out any niggling details. And here's the list of stuff that are still unresolved, but we trust these 3 people to do it. So we got it completely signed off. And part of that is we showed them things, and this was a little scary for the designer the first time we did it, but by this project it wasn't. We showed the committee things within 2 hours of starting to design. So the designer was showing concepts very, very quickly. And so as soon as we had things that were going in the wrong direction, we got feedback. As soon as we had things that were going in the right direction, we got feedback. One person on that committee, it was actually really fascinating because she really didn't agree with the direction, but she could see why we did it. And so we were very careful as we talk about design. Design language is important. I'm going to segue for a second. I hope this is okay. When you talk about design, you should never talk about what someone likes. You should talk about what works. And so because of the way our process worked, we had the core team select what is the impression we want people to feel when they come to the website. And those impressions were welcome, warm, friendly, inviting, accessible. And so there was one person in particular. I'm going to pop back a couple slides. Oops, too far. There was one person in particular that really didn't like the cartoons. She thought the cartoons were completely inappropriate for a college. She did not think they should be there, and she felt very strongly about it. But we sat down and we said, this is what we agreed, including you, that we wanted to convey. We wanted to convey warm, welcomeness, accessible to absolutely everyone. That we talked about, not pretentious. These are the words that we came up with. And this works. This solves that problem. And at the end, she said, I still don't like it, but you're absolutely right. It absolutely works, and it's what we need to do. And so we did the designs, we did the revisions, we got sign off, we did an on-site photo shoot. So day 1 we did the designs, either day 2 or day 4, I forgot which one, we sent a photographer to their location, and the designs we just used stock photos, and then we gave directions. We have a couple photographers we've used a bunch of times that take great direction. We sent them out, and with the stock photos, and we said, this is the vibe we want to get, and they came back with their photos. So by the 5th day, they had their photos already taken also. And as a bonus, we were actually able to improve their logo, too. They had originally said, you can't touch our logo, and it was too horrendous. The colors were horrible. And so when the designer showed the concepts, they said, here it is, and I just had to take the color out of your logo, and I just made it white on blue. And I can put the color logo back in if you guys want. And everyone in the committee said, no. And one of the guys said, I'll talk to the president tomorrow and I'll get sign off on this. So it was just this, we didn't fight it, we just kind of showed it. And there's a famous artist in New York City, she's a performance artist, Laurie Anderson, I think her name is. And one of the things that she said is talking about art is like dancing about architecture. And you can't talk about design, you need to look at design, and then you can talk about what you're seeing, but you can't just talk about it. So yeah. So also in those 5 days, we programmed the templates. So by day 5, they were entering content into their site with a template that started to look like theirs. It wasn't mobile friendly yet, but that's okay. With their photos from their students from their photo shoot based on what they signed off on in 5 days. So they had no time to change their mind. We didn't need recap meetings. All that stuff went away. Built out a bunch of key features. It turned out they didn't have a digital course catalog. Every other college we'd worked with up to that point had some sort of system that they paid for that gave them a course catalog. And we found out on Wednesday that they didn't actually have one. All they had was a PDF that was made from an Excel file. And so, this is where Drupal is amazing. And we've done this sort of projects both with Drupal and WordPress. Our shop uses both technologies. And where Drupal really shines is because you can spin up a new node type instantly. We actually prototyped the course catalog in under an hour. And so they said, we don't have a course catalog, so we threw it together. We built something. They started to plug things in. They actually found out that they didn't know what the hierarchy of their data was. So they didn't know whether the top should be majors, departments, programs, graduate versus continuing education versus on campus. And so they had to go back on campus on Thursday, get the feedback. On Friday, we finished off the feature. And so we went into this project not knowing we had to build a course catalog. No matter how much planning or how thick our spec was, we probably would have missed that one. But at the same time, we went into this project knowing that something like that was going to happen. And we had the developers ready and standing by. And we talked to them and we said, okay, what's higher priority to you? Newsletter integration or course catalog? And the client said course catalog. And we said, great, we'll make the course catalog. And if they had said newsletter integration, they wouldn't have a course catalog and they'd have newsletter integration. But they made that decision right there on the spot based on what we were plugging in. Content, we trained 15 people, added 100 pages in the first 5 days. So at that point, they're very comfortable with it. We used to do our trainings and then let clients leave. And a week later, they'd call us up and say, yeah, I kind of forgot what I was doing and I need to start over and I don't even remember my password. We wouldn't let them leave the room until they'd entered a bunch of content. We got them to sign off on the navigation. And instead of saying, are you guys okay with this navigation? We said, are you okay with this navigation being 80% final? Give us your list of concerns. And then we went out and tested the concerns and came back with recommendations. Most of the time, by the time the recommendations came back a day or two later, their concerns, they'd already forgotten about their concerns and they'd gone away. So by the end of 5 days, we had navigation 80% final. We took 3 key departments that joined us. So the second day, the third day, Wednesday, we had actually 16 people because a couple extra departments came in and we worked on their special needs because they have different departments have different needs. And the other thing is the workflow that we set up for them didn't work for them as an institution point of view. So we reorganized that too in terms of who can create content, who can approve content for publishing, things like that. We had set up something where they could assign it to other people and it wasn't working the way they wanted it to, so we threw it out. And again, because it was Drupal, we threw it out and built another one. If it was WordPress, I don't think we could have built it in the same time. WordPress is great, don't get me wrong, but this is where Drupal really shines in my mind. So they went live a month later. They had 500 pages. They had 25 content editors, which I thought was fascinating because we only trained 15. So somewhere along the way, They went back and trained 10 more people on campus without even asking us for help, which was kind of awesome. And part of the reason for that is because we got everyone together. So one of the reasons this whole process works is because of momentum. And one of the great things when we talk to people about this is when they look at it, they say, one of the first things everyone says is, I don't know if I can dedicate a week to this project. I don't know how I can carve out that time. We just say, well, look, here's the option. Can you carve out 3 days in that week for this project? 3 days is 24 hours. And, or would you rather carve out 80 hours over the next 3 months? Because those are your two options. That's what it looks like the other way when you add all the recap meetings and all the follow-up meetings and all that other stuff. And some people say, hey, we'd rather do it over 3 months. And we say, good luck, we're probably not the company to work with you. And people that say, let's make it happen, let's do it right, let's kick its butt, those are the people that are the best match for us. Questions so far? I have plenty more things to go over, but questions?
It seems like this really works when you can get in a room with your client. Have you had experience doing it like with remote clients?
If it's remote, what we do is you usually send a subset of our team to their office. So we sent, one of the case studies I'll show in a little bit was in New York, and so we sent 4 people down there for a week. And so it's kind of a split as to, it's always this catch-22, like does the designer have to be in the room, does the developer have to be in the room? When we go back and forth on it, we usually find if the content and strategy and photographer are the 3 most important people, and depending on the size of the project, the way our shop's set up, sometimes the project manager is one of those 3 people, and sometimes it's a separate person. But those are the people that we send on site, basically.
How was the technical fit with what the customer wanted and what Drupal was able to provide? Because I find sometimes, there's a perfect fit. Everyone just says, hey, yeah, this works. Let's go for it. And it's easy. But when you start running into, how a business works and it doesn't really translate well to Drupal, that's where...
Okay, so the question was, how does the fit work with Drupal? I have 2 stories about that, and actually, interestingly, they both involve WordPress, but the concept's still the same, right? So first of all, I'm going to tell you about our failure. So this project, this process has completely failed once. And I think in terms of a failure, it was an awesome failure, and I think it was actually a successful failure in many ways. But you guys can totally disagree with me, so let me tell you the story. So we were hired by a company that makes a product. They had a website that had about 400 pages. They ranked very, very well under water fountains. And so like downstairs, if there was a 2-story water fountain, or when you go to Disney World and there's a fountain spraying up stuff, they make those. And there's only a couple dozen companies in the United States that make those of this level. And they ranked very, very well in Google. They got all their business from their website. The problem was the person that maintained the website was the owner. And he was also the head salesperson, the lead engineer, and the person that did on-site installations. So they had 6 people in the office that couldn't do any of those other things. So the general manager came up to us and said, we want a website in a content management system that people other than the owner can maintain, and we want your help moving everything over. And so we got in there and we started working for the day, and we had the owner and the general manager there in the room, and we started building out the site. And the owner basically did this the whole time. I can do that in front page. Why can't you do it? Front page does that. I just want a table just like I did in front page. And yeah, I want it to be mobile too. Miserable day. Just did not progress at all. We built a site that was easier, quicker, better to maintain, flexible, mobile friendly, all these great things. At the end of the day, we had content in it. We had a workflow. We had thought about the navigation. We thought about changing things. But the owner just absolutely positively wasn't happy. And so we just kind of sat him down and we said, look, here's the deal. There's 2 of you in the room. The general manager wants a website that anyone in the office can maintain. The owner wants a website built in front page that he maintains. We can't solve both those problems. Like, that is just an insolvable problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to thank you for your time. We're going to refund half your money, and we're going to call it a day, and we're sorry we can't help you. At some point, if you have a different problem, or if the general manager has a problem that, if the owner leaves the company or something, whatever, we can work something out, but that's not for us. And so, it's a complete technology mishmash, complete needs mishmash. But here's why, and I might be deluding myself, but here's why I think it was an amazing success. A traditional project, we could have been 2.5 months and 3/4 of the way through the budget before we found that out. Instead, we were 1 friggin' day through the project. And I say 1 day, but it was a little more than 1 day because we had some setup, we had some prep, we had logistics. But really, 1 day into a project, we were able to decide that it was a technology mishmash. And to me, that was a huge, huge, huge win. I'm going to give you another example where there was a technology mishmash and it came out kind of the opposite way. And this one also was WordPress. A client came to us that wanted a website that took huge amounts of data and created a site that parsed the data along a number of axes. They wanted charts, they wanted tables, they wanted responses and questions that related to surveys. He wanted it to be able to work for thousands of surveys. He knew it was a huge project. He did not have the budget for it. So what he wanted us to do was just build something for one of his clients that was just kind of a prototype that we could kind of hold up. He could deliver it to the client. He's contractually obligated to do it. And we could see if there's a way we could efficiently make more of them down the road. And so we sat down with him and we just started building it with standard plugins. And it's complete brute force. There's the site itself has, let me just think about this for a second. I want to say 120 pages. And most of them have one or more tables on it, and then there's a little shifting thing where you can say, okay, I want to see it segmented by male versus female. I want to see it segmented by age. I want to see it segmented by this other demographic. Completely and totally hard-coded, and we put it together. And so we started working on it, and in the second day, he came in, and he's like, okay, what I don't get about this is it's not automated. How am I going to make a lot of these? And we looked at him, and we said, you're going to make a lot of these by spending $150,000. You're not right now. This is you got us for 2 days. What we can give you is this in 2 days. And he thought about it and he said, you know what? That's totally worth it for me. Let's do this in 2 days. And so he was totally empowered. He could see where the faults were right there because he was in the room, because we had him there. Did that answer your question? Those 2 stories?
I think the first one kind of answered a little more. You try to find the technology that fits.
Yeah, and the other thing. Yeah, exactly. Fit the requirements. Okay, so I'm going to talk about project management a little. Is there another question?
I'm just going to counter that. In that story, the technology did fit. It was just like the owner wanted it.
Right, in that case, the technology, well, you're saying the technology fit, it's not what the owner wanted, but the owner pays the bills. So the technology didn't, it's semantics, right, at some level, and it doesn't matter at some level also, right? Like, it's just not a match. And getting to no quickly is just as important as getting to yes quickly, right? The sooner you can do that, the better. So planning and process, there's a little handout about this. I have a couple more handouts up here. If I know not everyone got them, but there's a few more up in front that show this timeline. Here's kind of the old school way of doing it, and here's the more modern way of doing it. You take everything and you just take out the waste, right? So who's involved in this? Who's on the team? You have a project manager. It's harder to manage a project like this than it is kind of an old school multi-month project because you have to stay on top of everything. You basically have to do the same work, the same productive work, but you're doing it in less time, so you have less lag. So as a project manager, you need to be, your main goals are making sure that people are on track, that we're checking in on goals and time over and over and over again, and that there's not lag between things, that we're not dragging things out, that we're making smart choices. And so here's another example. One of our clients came to us after the contract was signed. We got into the kickoff meeting, and our first strategy meeting, which had the president and everything in the room, one of the people said, I really want a feature where if someone goes to an event, they can click a button and they'll get a reminder a week before an email. I saw it on some other site. I guess, I'm sure someone's heard this before. I saw it on a different site, and I wanted it on ours too. And, again, old school, we would have said, that wasn't in the spec, that wasn't in the contract, now we have to look at scope, now we have to look at this other thing. Instead, what we did is we do this exercise, we call it sticky buckets. And we have little Post-it notes, little sticky notes. And we have a red one, a green one, a yellow one, and a blue one. And the green one means it's really easy, less than 2 hours. The yellow one means it's a little harder, less than 5 hours. Red means it's more than 5 hours. And blue means we just have absolutely no idea and we'll need to figure it out. So we took that idea. It's nothing we've ever done before, and we just wrote it on the blue sticky pads. The whole team got together and prioritized, and that was high on the list. So we sent one of the developers into the other room. They went, found a module, plugged it in. It had a couple of issues that really we just weren't sure whether it was right or not. So we showed it to the client, and we said, look, you got 3 choices right now. You can say no to this feature. You can use it kind of as is with the plugin, but we'll make it look a little prettier. Or we can invest another 5 or 10 hours in building a custom solution for it. And the client said, oh, the module's good enough. That's fine. There's these other things that are higher priority. So again, it's about figuring out what those goals are. So keeping in control, being assertive. One thing that's really important for the project manager to do in a project like this is to make sure there aren't hidden stakeholders. So if a client says something like, I have to run that by Jim, then the PM has to say, I'll be on the call with you, and we'll do that right now. Don't go back to your office and do it. Let's get on the phone right now with Jim, because if Jim can derail this project, if you really need Jim's input, he should have been in the room in the first place, and let's not wait till the end of the project to fix that. The minute you see that wrong, you need to jump on it, and that's part of the role of the project manager. And they have to do all this while being flexible and knowing that every single thing on their plan might change, which is scary and exciting and absolutely awesome. So yeah, you need to know roles. So, here's an example of what a roadmap looked like for that project I was just talking about. And you could see, there's a surprise feature in there. And so part of what we did with the course catalog is we said flat out, hey, we have a maintenance budget for you. We can get this to completion if we can tap into that maintenance budget right now. And they huddled and talked about it, and 5 minutes later we had an answer, and we just kept rolling and kept momentum. And this is what the first day looked like. And you can see as a project manager, you need to keep people to the schedule, but you also need to change the schedule. So if things happen sooner or quicker, then you need to handle this. And I think if anyone needs these slides afterwards, you can come and grab me and I'll email them to you or whatever. I'll post them on Twitter or something. And then the teams. Let me talk briefly about the groups. We make a distinction between, sometimes we call them visionaries, sometimes we call them stakeholders. It really depends on the organization we're in and which one's going to get the best play. But we make a distinction between people that set the direction and people that have important perspective. And a lot of times we'll have clients that'll say something like, yeah, we're just not going to let him in the room, or we're not going to let her in the room because last time they totally derailed the project. And what we say is, okay, let's change that around. Let's bring them in on Wednesday and get their feedback. And we control that conversation because we're really good at it. And we'll bring them in and we'll say, hey, look, here's the goal. And these are the goals of the site. And these were set down by this group in the room, plus the president of the university, plus boom, 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 boom. These are the goals we came up with. This is how we set out to achieve it. We've heard you're someone that has a lot of input. Can you please let us know if we're missing anything on this direction? And so one example of that is there was one site we were doing that we brought someone in that they were trying to keep out of the room, and the person said, well, one thing that I see that you're missing is 20% of the people that call our office only speak Spanish, and we can't necessarily help that population, so it's not core to our mission, but we could put something up for them on the website fairly easily. And so again, halfway through the project, we find this new thing. I mean, how hard is it to add 3 pages in Spanish as long as you have someone that speaks Spanish? And so we're instantly able to correct for that. So that person that in the past had always been the roadblock becomes a great asset. And so we take those things, we test the heck out of them, we do all sorts of fun testing. Okay, so why do projects fail? Ego and fear is unknown process. So if the reason your project's failing is because you don't actually know what you're doing and you're afraid to say it, there are a few things you can do to get help with that, right? But we often find more often the reason projects fail is because of bad processes. And the way to fix a bad process is to just get into an iteration loop as quickly as possible. And so there are definitely cases where a project fails because someone just doesn't know how to write the code. And that's the left-hand side. And if that's your problem, the project manager should recognize it and remedy that situation. But more often, I'm saying the same thing, but I'm saying it hopefully more articulately this time. More often when a project fails, we see it fails because you're asking the wrong questions, or you're jumping to conclusions, or you're trying to, 12 people can never answer a question. 12 people, the goal of 12 people in a room is to find questions, and then we pull out those questions and we ask other people those questions and we get feedback. My wife, who's basically smarter and better at me at everything, she says that your brand is not what you say it is, it's what your customer says it is. It's what anyone else says your brand is. And the same thing with your site and with usability. So you need to put your ego aside. You need to get the right people in the room. Again, talking about ego, how many people have worked with a designer that when you gave them feedback got mad at you? Right? There's no place for designers like that. I have this philosophy that a lot of designers want to be artists. They want to have their stuff hung in museums, and they can't get there. So they're just grumpily being a graphic designer because that's the closest thing that actually pays okay. And no matter how talented they are, you never want to work with them. The person you want to work with is the person that says, wow, that's cool, let me try that. Or I don't think that will work because of this, but let me try that. And so in terms of who's on your team, from a designer, you want someone that's just going to try absolutely anything and give good feedback. I just saw, I wish I could remember the person's name, and I'm embarrassed that I don't. So my blog, Jason on Design, I just posted an article, if anyone hires designers, about the 4 stages of design, and I found this great article online where someone kind of articulated where people are and where people get stuck, and there's people that are really talented designers that never become great, and he kind of outlines where that gap is, and it's really exciting. So if you're having frustrating designer experiences, you should look that up. Low ego, flexible, confident, an expert, and they need to have creativity on demand. They need to not be afraid to try something and show it 15 minutes later. Otherwise, they can't work as part of this team. Development, again, low ego and flexible. Enjoys helping, prefers simple solutions. So here's the problem with developers, and that came out wrong. There's more than one problem with developers. No kidding. So 2 interesting tidbits about developers, right? The first one is they've done surveys where they go and they ask people and they say, how long do you think it would take you to go to the market and buy milk and come back home? And they ask people. And believe it or not, engineers are the worst at estimating that out of pretty much any profession out there, right? Because they always look, and I think there's 2 reasons for that, right? But I think the biggest reason is because they're optimists. So an engineer looks at a problem and says, there's going to be an elegant solution to that, and I am going to do that elegant solution. And that's great, but it doesn't always work out that way. Okay, so there's one tidbit about developers. The second tidbit about developers is if you're a developer, you like complex problems. You'd be a horrible developer if you didn't. Someone back there said who was it that said they like tricky problems? If you're a developer, raise your hand if you like tricky problems. Right? That means you're a good developer. That's a good thing. But the downside with that is if you have something that's really easy, it's not fun for you. So how do you make it fun for you? You make it really complicated, right? And so in order for a blitz or any sort of sprint like this or prototyping to go well, you need to have someone that actually prefers simple solutions to complex solutions. And I was really impressed because the talk I was just at I was by, I think it was Acquia's first employee, Gabon, is that how to pronounce? Gabor, there it is. And I expected it to be like super, super technical and way over my head. And he's like, here's how you use the configuration function. And it was very much like I understood everything up there, and I'm not a developer at all. And I just thought it was this like plateau where you're a bad programmer, you're an okay programmer, you're a great programmer, and then you don't even have to program. And he's like, oh. And so again, this idea of preferring simple solutions. And they have to be an expert at the tools they use. So it would be a nightmare for a Drupal developer to try to do a blitz in WordPress or vice versa or something like that. That just wouldn't work. And is comfortable using modules to get a good start. Now, the modules might not be the be-all, end-all, but in that first 5 days, if we can work out the whole flow in modules, then the next week, developer can go and work out the details and figure out, now that we actually have something that we're prototyping and poking at and seeing, we can get it to the next step. So we kind of need everyone to be an expert. And so what's tricky about that is like, what's an expert from the client point of view? You know, if you're working with a sales department or a customer service department or the operations expert, they're not going to be an expert at web development. They're not going to be an expert at design or branding or user interaction or user experience or any of those things. So what are they an expert at? And one thing I want to put out there is if someone comes to you with answers, they're a salesperson, not an expert, right? So experts ask questions. So here's an example of it. Take a look at this picture here, okay? So does anyone know Which Test One? Has anyone seen that website? It's super cool, isn't it? Oh, it's amazing. So what they've done there, so Which Test One collects tests like this. So we're going to do a show of hands here. Which Test One looked at this and said, which one converts better, the one with the icons across the top and the text, or the one without the icons? And so, oh, I just gave away the answer. Darn it. Okay, we'll have to go to the next one. And so, okay, so let's do this one. I won't click any farther on this one, I guarantee. Okay, so which one's more effective, A or B? So we're going to have a vote. Ready? So the only difference is the color black and the words. I mean, they're very subtly different, right? So which one of these converted better? If you think it was A, raise your hand. Got a few. If you think it was B, raise your hand. Okay, dominant is B. Oh. Okay, next one. Oh my gosh, I totally screwed up this slide. I shouldn't have looked at it. Okay, wait. Here we go. Let's go to this one. Okay, so which one of these emails converted better? And they have basically the same content, but you can see they're presented so differently. One is an HTML one with a lot of graphics. This is an opt-in email, so people have asked to get this email. And one is plain text. And they didn't ask people whether they wanted plain text or not. They just A/B tested it. And so the question then becomes, which one converted more? And so raise your hands if you think it's the plain text one. And raise your hands if you think it's the graphical one. Okay, so now look at those conversion numbers. That's absolutely friggin' huge, okay? So this is the example that I give to clients when they don't want to bring someone in that has a different opinion than them. Because I'm just going to go out there and say, I think most of the people in this room are pretty darn smart. Did anyone get both of those right? I wish I could have done 3 because two people got both of them right. I mean, when I do all 3, very rarely does a room this size get all 3 of them right. I mean, it's just amazing, right? So again, experts are people that ask questions. And so you want to get people in the room. You want to be open to that. And it comes down to project management, which is good because we have a lot of leaders in here. And so the trick of the project manager is to focus them and to not let people get stuck in the quagmire of questions. I mean, anytime anyone has a back and forth. So here's a great example. We're working with a department. This is another higher ed example. I wish I could think of another one right now, but I'm just going to go with this. So we're working with Dartmouth College. And the room was very evenly divided as to what should happen. This was for a specific department. What should happen on the department webpage. And half the people thought there should be a section that said specifically just for students, just for guidance counselors, just for parents, just for alumni, and there were a few different categories. And the other half thought very strongly that's horrible and they wanted it clean and simple. So you have the clean and simple camp and you have the lots of clear buttons camp. And so they were going back and forth. So we just said, guys, we're going to take this question and we're going to come back to it in 2 days when we regroup. We've captured it. We've talked about it enough. Let's just take it away and regroup. And so we got in the car. We had about a 2-hour drive back to our office. So we got in the car, and before we lost cell reception, we called up the office and got one of our developers on the phone. And what they did was they went to the current website, which was absolutely horrendous, and they hacked those buttons into it. So it didn't look too ugly. It didn't look much uglier than it already looked, but it actually had those buttons in there, and all of them linked somewhere. So by the time we got back to the office, they had that programmed. We sent it to their current web team, and we said, hey, can you replace this line of code with this line of code on the current site for a week? 1 week later, we had data, and what the data showed is only one of those buttons ever got clicked on. So what do? We put that button in the navigation, and the decision's completely gone. And so again, when you get a bunch of people in the room, you want to keep in mind your goal of having those people in the room is to ask questions, not to find answers. Okay. So I'm going to do a couple quick examples and then some more questions. So this was a project we did in a month, complete redesign. Increase doubled 2.5 times, and they had a 4-fold increase in 6 months. Here's what a 2-week project looks like. It's a much smaller team. We did print material as well as a website. This is maybe a 30-page website with a very, very difficult board of directors. We got their board of directors to self-nominate a representative to come, and they were pretty happy. They've never really managed their board of directors that well before. This was a 1-week project. This one might have even been in Squarespace, which we use sometimes because use the easiest tool possible, right? This also applies to big projects. And so one thing I want to point out, again, I was thinking about this during the keynote. WordPress has a lot of issues. One of their issues is it has a really friggin' big code base because it always supports everything in the past and it never gets rid of versions. But if you do a Google Trends to see what gets the most searches, you see WordPress blows away Drupal. And so, we're talking about with Drupal going to this thing where we won't be holding up releases for every single feature. WordPress has been doing that for a while, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I really do think that's one of the reasons why they're able to maintain their market lead. I thought this was a great quote that someone had. I don't know, is this person in the room? I don't even know. It's a great quote. Here's a project we did for a client, a month-long project for Yale and Johnson & Johnson. First month we built it, and the whole data component of it completely failed. Second month we brought in one of our PHP developers and a freelance PHP Drupal developer that had been using Drupal for 7 years, and our dev had only been using it for a couple years. Built the whole thing, it failed again. Third month, we scrapped everything they did, and a site builder who'd only been using Drupal for 5 or 6 months went in and rebuilt it using modules, and we needed, I don't know, I want to say like 100 lines of PHP code at the end of the day, and it worked flawlessly. This was a longer project than some of those other ones, and then it took about 10 months of burn-in before we actually got everything. We were constantly iterating and constantly growing, but again, all different sizes. So, okay, so I am going to, we just fly through a couple of these. Momentum is important. You might have gotten that from me. Of course, I'm slowing down here, so there you go. One thing I want to share is, so a lot of times people hear this and they're like, that's great, but it would never work at my organization. This has worked at so many organizations that I've seen. You just have to get the right people in the room and frame it the right way. And what Toyota recommends is you just start small. You pick one little battle that'll have big good outcome, and you do it, and then you start sharing it and go to the next step. Okay, there's some hints on the table. There's handouts, and I have a few minutes left for questions. Sorry, I'm running a little later. I digressed. So who has questions?
I have a question, and maybe it's a stupid question, but how do you manage, like, cutting out communication? Because what a lot of times happens is, a visionary or a stakeholder is going to come in and is going to, oh, yeah, actually, I want to discuss this. And actually, I want to involve my whole team now to discuss this. The whole marketing team should now see, the design and discuss the colors, and then it turns into a whole day of meetings.
Right, so you have a stakeholder will come in and say, oh, I want to discuss it, and I want to involve the whole team, and I want the whole marketing team involved, and I want 1 billion people involved. So first of all, we work really hard to make sure we get the right people time held on their calendar early enough. And so we'll ask our clients things like, hey, is your director prone to bring in a bunch of people and ask a lot of questions? If so, who are the people they bring in the most? Can they all hold 2 hours on their schedule, the same 2 hours on Wednesday afternoon, and we'll call them if we do have questions. And so this goes back to the project management side of it. Figure anyone you have a very good chance of needing, and make sure you block off at least a little time. And so this is what we use the perspective group for. The second thing is our process is really focused on getting stakeholders to say words, listening to those words, and repeating back the right answer using their own words. And so instead of saying, what do you think of this design? Like, first of all, we try very hard to make sure that only our team can present designs to anyone. And so instead of saying, what do you think of this design? Okay, so here's the example, ready? How many people love the color yellow? Like, it's in their top 2 colors. Raise your hand if yellow is one of your top colors. Okay, so we got about 8 people. How many people it's in the bottom 2 colors? They really don't like yellow. They probably wouldn't ever wear a yellow shirt. Okay, so we got about 8 people. So if I show you a design that's yellow, we instantly have two camps. And if I say, what do you think about this? We got about 8 people in this room that love it, and 8 people in the room that hate it, and a bunch of other people that are just listening to them ping-ponging back and forth, maybe shifting a little on the spectrum one way or another, right? Now, on the other hand, if I say, yellow is the color of school buses and taxis in the United States. The reason for that is because science says it's one of the colors that catches your eye the most. So we've picked a color that's not too faded out, that's going to catch everyone's eye, and it really stands out. Here's how it compares to your competitors. So when your client goes to these 4 websites, when they get to yours is going to be like a slap in the face. And remember, the words you came up with were different, bold, innovative. So we decided to do it this way. Do you have any feedback on that? Now suddenly it's a very, very different proposition. We have also put together presentations for clients where during the rollout, we'll bring in their marketing team or their support team or their sales team, and we'll actually present the methodology we went through behind the process. Because we can either win by having a design someone likes, or we can have people agree with the methodology.
Before we take any more questions, I know a lot of you may have questions, and I know he has a lot of information. But the next session starts in a few minutes. So if you do have questions,
we'll take them offline. Okay, sorry. I thought I had till quarter of. Thank you all. Appreciate it.